Hi, this is Sarit Switzer, and welcome to the It Is Taught podcast, a podcast devoted to the teachings of Rabbi Shneur Zalman of Liadi as recorded in his most famous work, the Tanya. My hope for this show is to make these teachings accessible and relatable to the average person, regardless of prior Jewish education or affiliation. The episodes follow the prescribed daily study portions and are meant to serve as practical lessons in how to live your life as your true self and develop an authentic and powerful relationship with your Creator. I have personally experienced the effects the study of this work has had on me, and I'm excited to share what I can of this knowledge with you. So please join me on this journey of learning, self-growth, and connection with your source. Hi, and welcome to the It Is Taught podcast. This is episode 79 for the 8th of Adar Aleph in a leap year. And today we are going to be studying chapter 28 of Likutei Amarim. And the topic for today is all about ignoring the heckler. So we'll see what that means. And so the idea of a heckler is something that probably stand-up comedians are the most overtly familiar with, but we'll see that this is something that we can all actually relate to in our own way. So for a stand-up comedian, they will often have the experience that they'll get up there, they're giving their show, and there's going to be one or two people in the audience who start heckling them, start making fun of them, start saying, boo, you're not funny, get off the stage, blah, 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 whatever it is, or answering back to them. And so what should the comedian do in that moment in time? So do you think that it would be a good idea for the comedian to engage the heckler? So most likely no, right? So what comedians have learned time and time again is the best thing to do is actually just to ignore that heckler. And I think that this is something that we can all relate to on some level or another in our lives, that even if we have never done stand-up comedy, throughout our lives, unfortunately, most of us have at some point or another come into contact with people who have either outright made fun of us or said slurs to us, whether it was like anti-Semitic slurs or even just said things to us that were really just really distracting. I know that personally, the way that I can really relate to this, and this is probably something that probably a lot of people could identify with, is over COVID, where a lot of people were stuck in their homes and stuck to the internet. There became this like phenomenon, which existed before too, but it seemed to get really more enhanced over COVID, where people would be posting on Facebook and posting all kinds of political things and venting all of their emotions of whatever kind on other people's Facebook accounts. So I had this, maybe this is my opportunity to vent about this, but I would post something on Facebook, which I really thought was pretty innocuous, nothing really super controversial, something stating something I was thinking about the current situation or whatever. And I would get like a slew of comments, many of them, some of them were appropriate and fine and nice, but a very big bunch of them were just really antagonistic towards me and often actually had nothing to do with the post that I had posted. And it really sort of confused me and it frazzled me. And it was, what is this about? And I noticed this several times. And in the beginning, when this would happen, in my naivete, I tried to engage these people in discussions and write back to them. What do you mean by that? Can you clarify? How does this have to do with what I posted? Things like that. And I quickly learned that I was not engaging with people who were logical, or at least the comments that they were posting were not coming from a logical place. And it was not very purposeful for me to respond. And really the best way to deal with these hecklers, so to speak, was really just to ignore them. I can think of other examples of my life where this is true. And I'm sure that you have areas where this applies to as well, that often in life, or I shouldn't say often, but there are times in life when people approach us and talk to us in rational, nice ways. Hopefully this is the majority of our lives. But every so often, there will be somebody that we encounter, whether it's a weird stalker or a weird person online or somebody who has ill feelings towards us for whatever reason, who just distracts us from whatever we're doing and tries to engage us in some kind of conversation that is really very counterproductive. And really the best advice for dealing with these kind of people is to simply ignore them and not let them distract you from what you're doing. Now, what we're going to be learning about in Tanya today is we're going to take this a little bit deeper, where we're going to talk about how not only does this apply when we're talking about actual physical hecklers from the outside, but we actually all have a heckler on the inside as well. We have, as we've talked about before, we have not only one, but we have two souls. We have an animal soul and we have a godly soul. And so again, like we have this misconception in our culture of this idea that anytime we have any kind of impulse, any kind of feeling, any kind of thought, we should act on it. We shouldn't repress it. We should indulge it, really go through with it to the fullest degree, explore that feeling or that thought. The Tanya does not go with this approach at all. And what the Tanya, as we'll learn today, actually says is that, in fact, you don't only have one voice inside of you. You have yourself, your true voice. And then you have this other voice that really you can think of as a heckler. And our job is actually to figure out how to deal with this heckler and not let this heckler obstruct us from our ultimate purpose in life. So let's get into the text and see how the Alter Rebbe breaks it down, and maybe we can understand this a little bit deeper. So here we go. So the topic, just to again bring it into context, if you haven't been following, please go back as always to follow and catch up to where we're at. But we've been talking a lot about the idea of thinking about things and inappropriate thoughts, counterproductive thoughts, distracting thoughts, thoughts that will deter you and distract you from your service of God. Because our ultimate purpose, obviously, is why we're put on this earth, is to serve our Creator and live our lives to our fullest ability. So we talked about how it does happen because we're human, and this is how God created us, we are all susceptible to having thoughts that distract us from this purpose and lead us down a path of having all kinds of desires for things that are inappropriate or outright forbidden and things like that. So the Alter Rebbe here says that even if it falls upon a person that they have all kinds of different thoughts for all kinds of different desires and all kinds of different foreign thoughts while they are involved in holy service of Torah or prayer with intentions. So it's like, let's say it could happen that a person, like we've talked about, a person's at work and they start thinking about things that are inappropriate. What happens if a person is engaged in actual spiritual service and this happens? So a person is learning Torah or they're in the middle of praying, and in the middle of this, they start having these inappropriate thoughts. What should they do? So the Alter Rebbe says, do not focus on them, but rather just push them out of your mind in the moment, right away. And the Alter Rebbe says, do not be a fool to think that you can try to elevate these character traits of the thoughts. So it's like a person might think to themselves like, oh, wow, I'm having this like inappropriate thought right now, or I'm having some kind of thought right now. I wonder where that's coming from. I wonder how I can rectify myself and fix myself in this way. And what is going on with this thought? The Alter Rebbe is saying, don't go there. Do not be a fool that you could go and rectify yourself and work on yourself in that moment. In that moment, push the thought out of your mind immediately. Because this whole idea of rectifying your character traits in such a manner is really only applicable to tzaddikim. Because tzaddikim do not have foreign thoughts of their own, but rather they have foreign thoughts of other people. So we've already talked about this, that what makes a tzaddik different than a Benoni is one of the main traits is they don't struggle with these inappropriate thoughts anymore. They don't have these impulses, these destructive kind of impulses. So for tzaddikim, if they do have kind of thoughts that are foreign and that have nothing to do with serving God, it means that it's coming from somewhere else. And tzaddikim have this ability and this power to take the thought and to elevate it and transform it into something good. We don't have that ability. When we get some kind of inappropriate thought, we should push it aside immediately. And so the Alter Rebbe says, because if a person gets this thought, which is coming from themselves, it's not coming from the outside like it would be for a tzaddik. So it's coming from, where is it coming from? It's coming from the negativity that is still in their heart, in the left ventricle of the heart. And how can they elevate this thought if they themselves are attached down below? So it's like when you're steeped in the darkness, you cannot elevate yourself out of the darkness. So it's just like, if you think about somebody who's wallowing in their own darkness, they can't get themselves out of it. They need somebody from the outside to get themselves out of it. But the Alter Rebbe says that even though this is the case, that a person cannot actually elevate themselves out of it and rectify this thought and transform it in this way and transform the character trait, you shouldn't get sad from this. You shouldn't let your heart fall down and turn into sadness at this time when you're serving God, because when you're serving God, you're actually supposed to be in a very joyous state. But rather, if anything, you should actually become stronger, and you should increase in your power and your intensity with all of your energy in terms of you should increase in your intention in prayer with great joy and with great gladness, even more. Because he should recognize, if this happens, that this thought, this negative thought that's coming, this foreign thought, is coming from the klipa, from the husks, as we've talked about previously, that are found in the left ventricle of the heart, that is waging war in the Beinoni with the godly soul that's within them. And then the Alter Rebbe says that it's known that the way of warriors and wrestlers, when they wrestle together, when you have two people that are wrestling, when one of them rises up, like when one of them is winning, then the other one starts to fight stronger. Because it's like, oh no, this guy's like really, really trying hard. I got to work a little bit harder. So too, when the godly soul is really trying and really elevating itself and really becoming stronger while it's praying and davening, so thus the klipa also starts to do that, also starts to fight in order to really mess a person up and confuse them, to bring them down into these foreign thoughts. So it's sort of like that a person may find that not only is it that it is possible to get inappropriate thoughts during times of prayer and holy service, it actually may be more likely in a certain sense, because while a person is involved in prayer and study and they're really working towards serving God, this is a time when the godly soul is really prominent and really fighting hard. And the animal soul recognizes this and is like, wait a second, oh my gosh, the godly soul is going to win me out now and get rid of me. I gotta up my game. So then it actually makes sense that the animal soul is going to struggle a little bit more. And then the Alter Rebbe goes on here and he says that this is not like the mistake of the world. What do the world's mistake in? What do they say? Is that they say that if a person is getting these foreign thoughts, it means that their prayer is nothing. And it's in vanity. It's vain. And if a person would be praying properly, they would not get these kind of foreign thoughts. So a person might think that while they are getting these foreign thoughts, while they're praying, it's like, oh my gosh, I thought I was here praying to God. I had good intention and everything, but look at me. I'm such an idiot. I'm such a loser. I'm obviously not praying properly if I'm getting these kind of thoughts. The Alter Rebbe is saying, no, that's not the case. The truth is, this would be true if a person only had one soul, and this was the one soul that was praying, and this same soul that was praying was also the same soul that was thinking about these foreign thoughts. But the truth is, as we talked about and as we learned, a person actually has two souls that fight one with the other in the mind of man. Each one has a different will, and each one wants to rule over the body and wants to rule over the mind totally on its own. And thus, anytime a person experiences some type of thinking that comes that has to do with Torah or fear of heaven, this all comes from the godly soul. These are the thoughts of the godly soul. And by contrast, any thoughts and words that have to do with the world, that are more like worldly oriented, these come from the animal soul. And it's just that the godly soul is enclosed within the animal soul. So meaning to say, this is why when a person is praying, it's like they become conscious. They may become conscious of these foreign thoughts, even though it's not coming from the godly soul. It's coming from the animal soul, but they become enclosed in the godly soul. So it sort of becomes confusing and it feels like it's coming from the godly soul. And the Alter Rebbe says that this is like an analogy of a person who is praying with great intention, and standing in front of him is a very evil, wicked idolater who starts talking to him and starts trying to confuse him and distract him from what he's praying. And the advice for this is not to answer to this person. So remember, just like we talked about a heckler in life. So just like this, if let's say if you're in a scenario where you are praying with great intention, and then there's some guy around you who's, really anti-religious, let's say, and is trying to distract you and make fun of you or just talk to you and everything to get you away from your prayers, you should not answer to them, but you should actually just ignore them. And so you should not talk to them in a good way or in a bad way. Like don't try to reason with such a person, but rather you should make yourself as if you are deaf and as if you don't hear at all what they're saying. And this is a fulfillment, a verse that is found in Mishlei, and this is from Mishlei chapter 26, verse 4, where it says, Al ta'an ksil be'ivalto pen tshve lo gam ata. So that literally means answer not a fool according to his folly, lest you too become like him. So I'm sure you've heard this idea before, that it's sort of like if somebody is insulting you or making fun of you or whatever, it's like if you answer the person and if you start engaging with the person, you kind of you fall into the mud like them. Like there are a lot of different sayings that have to do with that. So there's a saying that's actually attributed to the author George Bernard Shaw, that's along these lines, where he said, I learned long ago never to wrestle with a pig. You get dirty, and besides, the pig likes it. So that's basically the situation here, is you do not wrestle with a pig. You don't engage with these kind of people who are just merely there to distract you. This isn't somebody to be reasoned with. And now the Alter Rebbe says that this is basically the same idea, where he literally uses pretty much the same analogy of getting dirty, not making yourself dirty, in this application of when we get some kind of foreign or inappropriate thought, that we should not answer the inappropriate thought. We should not try to wrestle with the thought, because the one who wrestles, this is what the Alter Rebbe says, the one who wrestles with somebody who's filthy becomes filthy themselves. But rather, you should make yourself as if you don't know and you don't hear these thoughts. So really, you should ignore these thoughts. So just like you would ignore a physical, actual live heckler, your thoughts are also a heckler like that you should ignore. And you should push them outside of your attention, and you should increase in your intensity and with your energy of the intention that you have towards God. And if it's difficult for you to do this, says the Alter Rebbe, to push them outside of your attention because they are so bothersome, and it's really, sometimes it does happen that a person has these kind of thoughts and they're not just like passing thoughts, but it's actually really bothersome and they're really, really distracting in a really strong way, then what should you do in that case? You should humble your soul to God and beg to God in your thoughts to have mercy on you. And with God's great mercy, just like a father would be merciful towards his children, because the children of a father come from the father's mind, this is the same way that God should have mercy on his soul, on the person's soul, because our souls come from him, and God should save a person from these turbulent waters, and for his sake he should do it, because we are a part of God. So basically it's like if it becomes too distracting, then a person should really plead for mercy and ask God and say, God, we come from you, and please have mercy on us to help us out in this instance. So that's the end of the chapter. So just to recap, what we learned today is we talked about the idea that just like the best solution to dealing with a physical heckler, which is something that we all kind of learn at some point or another in our lives, hopefully, is to ignore them and not to engage them in conversation, not to try to change their mind or elevate them or anything like that. This is the same approach that we should have with inappropriate thoughts, that when we are in the middle of praying to God or studying Torah or any other type of spiritual pursuit, if we get an inappropriate thought at that time, we should not try to transform it. We should not try to get to the bottom of it and be like, why am I thinking this right now? What is going on for me? And go into a whole psychoanalysis or anything like that. We simply should ignore it, and we simply should push it out of our minds and focus on our attention elsewhere. And if anything, it should actually, in a way, kind of motivate us and make us realize that we're on the right track. Because why would these thoughts be coming to us at these moments? Because just like in a wrestling match, when you have one wrestler who is becoming stronger and winning over the other, like if you ever see this you see this often with races when people are like running marathons, that you'll watch two people racing one next to the other, and when one of them starts going faster, the other one begins to speed up as well, because it's like, oh my gosh, I don't want that guy to beat me. So that's basically what's going on within you, is that when the animal soul sees that your godly soul is doing so well, then it's like, okay, you think you're doing so well, I'm going to up my game and I'm going to challenge you on the next level. And so I think this is really good. So aside from the fact that that this is really good advice in terms of serving God, I think one of the things that you may have recognized at this point in Tanya, and I think one of the reasons why the book of Tanya is so popular is because it's really, really good psychology. It's really good psychological advice for pretty much anything in life. So obviously we want to, our main focus is in terms of serving God, but we really can apply this to really everything. It's very commonsensical in a way that if you're going about your day, you're doing things, you're being productive, and you're trying to live your life, and you start getting all kinds of thoughts of self-doubt, of distractions, of things pulling you in all kinds of different directions that really have no basis in reality and that really are illogical. And sometimes it's not always clear to see that they're illogical, but if deep down you'll know that this is something that's distracting you from your purpose. The best advice that the Alter Rebbe is giving here really is behavioral therapy. It's push the thoughts aside and keep going with your life. You don't have to get and engage with every single thought and psychoanalyze every single thought that you have and why you're thinking this and what's going on. That's not necessary. Sometimes what we need to do is literally just to push aside our thoughts and focus our attention elsewhere. And wherever we focus our attention, that's where we're going to go. And so that is the chapter for today. And tomorrow we're going to move on, chapter 29, and I will speak to you then. Thanks for listening to the It Is Taught podcast, hosted by Sarit Switzer. This podcast is dedicated in loving memory of my maternal grandfather, Avraham Yitzchak ben Binyamin HaKohen of blessed memory. Music by Shoshana. If you enjoyed this episode and would like to support the show, please share it with others and subscribe on YouTube, Apple iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. And make sure to leave us a 5-star review. To find out more about the It Is Taught project, including more information on my soon-to-be published book, please visit our website, itistaught.com. To catch the latest from me, follow me on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Looking forward to speaking with you tomorrow, and until then, have a great day.